Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the After Maghrib podcast. By now, inshallah, you've hit the subscribe button and you are following us across all our social platforms. At the same time, I hope you're enjoying our weekly conversations, and inshallah, together we are on this journey to learn and inshallah get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, speaking of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and trying to get closer to our Lord, a question we always, neglect and never think of is dying, death, and afterlife. And inshallah, in this conversation, we want to discuss, what is the afterlife like? What does barzakh even mean? Maybe you've never heard what barzakh means. And today, inshallah, we're going to get into that and we're going to delve straight into the conversation. And before we start today's conversation, I want to welcome my amazing co-host, my electric, eccentric. Yes. Give me some more rhyming words.
Electric, eccentric. I'm lost for words here.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Sayed Ali Aziz. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah, how are you?
I'm okay, good. Weather's been a bit crazy this week. We've been hit with all sorts of weather and alhamdulillah.
Climate change.
Global warming. Alhamdulillah, things are going good. We talk about death. We spoke about death obviously earlier in the year.
A few months back, yeah.
Which was a heavy conversation. And we stopped at the point of death. And we wanted to consider what happens after death as well, in the afterlife, which is such a heavy topic. But a lot of the time when we talk about that, there's a negative connotation attached to it, maybe rightly or wrongly. But of course, inshallah, we will be getting into that, but with a specialist with us as well, our dear friend and brother, Sayed Abdullah Nakeeb. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyid.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi.
How are you doing? Pleasure to have you back on.
It's a pleasure to be here again. It was a beautiful experience last time, and inshallah we can make another memorable time together.
Last time you here, Sayyid, of course, we recorded our Ashura Maqtal podcast, and for those who haven't heard it, please check it out. And even if you are listening, make sure you also tune in and also subscribe to Sayyid Abdullah's socials on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, anywhere else.
I don't even use Twitter. It's just Instagram.
Why not?
Why not? Now X is it now, isn't it? Or
X yes. Times have changed.
I have to find my password again.
Oh my God. Say, obviously, big topic.
Yes.
Why should we even bother talking about this?
Straight into it. I like it. Well, so on the first level, it's one of those things that whether you're religious, you're not religious, you don't believe in God altogether, you have to believe in death, because that's one thing that everyone knows is coming. So in that level, you know that it's coming, whether you're religious or not religious. You need to know, what am I to expect? What is going to be there when the outcome comes, that all of a sudden I cease to exist. And if you're religious, you understand that your soul's transitioning to the next journey that it has in front of it. So the importance is there to say, am I prepared for that journey ahead, like anything, or am I not? So what is there that I have to prepare for? What are my actions going to manifest into? And am I ready or am I not ready? So that's inshallah the discussion. We're going to look at different things inshallah tonight about that. So where do you want to start? We can start with the journey in itself.
Where do you think is important to start? Because the moment of death is obviously the beginning of the transitionary period. When you talk about the interaction with supernatural forces in the sense of Malak al-Maut, and some say Amir al-Mu'mineen if you're one of the blessed ones, but the point in which your body your soul transcends from your body and you engage, do you reckon that's a good place for us to begin with?
Yeah, death in itself. So the Sakaratul Maut, as we call them. So the
I guess you're worried when I hear that.
Yeah. I remember I was majalis and I said death. So tonight we're going to be speaking about death. And all of a sudden the mic cut out.
Allah.
Then I had someone in the back, but and they were like, I was like, Malik al-Maut's here, so be prepared. But so we start with the pains associated with Sakarat al-Maut, because every time it's mentioned, that's the one thing of the pulpits that are always used as a tool to instruct fear into people. Just like, be prepared for that.
Yes.
And understandably, obviously, when you go towards the different books that we have, like let's say you go towards the books of say Dastaghaib al-Shirazi as an example, or Abbas al-Qummi. When they speak about death, they speak about sakaratul maut. The interesting thing is they explore sakaratul maut through two different lenses. So, we have the understanding, the first lens is, if you're good or if you're bad. That's normal lenses. But then he looks at it through God's justice. So he says, as a thinker, let's say that I'm a person that is religious, but I have bad deeds.
Yeah.
So where's God's justice in that? And if I'm a bad person, that I don't believe in God, and I have good deeds, and I always ask, how is God going to reward them? How is God going to punish them? So amongst the things I say from God's justice is that if you are religious and you have some bad deeds, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, in sakaratul maut, in those pains, increase the pain in it.
Ajib.
Why? Because when you go into your grave after that pain, you're filtered. That sin that you did in this world, now Allah has punished you for it. So when you go towards either the Jannah of barzakh or the Jannah of the hereafter, you're a clean slate. And likewise, if you're a let's say disbeliever, or your ultimate abode will be hellfire, that they explore the concept of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving you an easy sakaratul maut. So you won't feel any pain whatsoever going and transitioning into either the barzakh or the hereafter. And then when you come towards God, you're like, well, I did some good things, I helped this person, or I performed these particular acts of charity, or whatever have you. He says, I've already, granted you their due reward by not allowing you to feel the pains during that death or the extraction of the soul. So that in itself is something, when you look at it, it's like, but then on the flip side, you do have the stories of what Musa felt and what Maryam felt, because we're saying if a believer doesn't have any sins, you shouldn't feel the pains. But then you go to the story of Musa, and the beautiful story when Malik al-Maut comes to him, he says to him, Musa, I've come to grab your soul, because sometimes they come to visit the prophets, so they're chilling, they're enjoying themselves, but sometimes they're like, oh, it's that angel, and he's like, you visiting, or is there something else?
Come.
Yeah, he's like, no, it's the time. So he says, okay, no problem. So how are you gonna extract my soul? So he says, it's from your feet. And he says, how can you? When I walk towards the promised, or walk towards Shajar al-Qaddasa, for example, or be in the presence of God, that I walk towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
And he says, I'll take it from your hand. And he says, how can you, when this is what I held the stick with? And he keeps going, this is where I split the sea, and I'll take it from your tongue. And I'm like, but I spoke to Allah, I'm known as Kalim Allah. So every time he's saying something, Musa's like, come on.
Sort me out.
Yeah. But at the last one, he gave him, in a tradition, naranj.
Okay.
Which is like a
tangerine.
Yeah. So he's like, smell it. So he smells it, and at that moment he takes his life. And then they ask Musa, how did you feel? And he says, I felt like I've been skinned. And that's a prophet of God.
Wow.
When Isa speaks to his mother, he says to her, oh, my mother, shall I return you to the world? And she says that the taste of Sakarat al-Maut is still on my tongue. Wow. This is Maryam, which is one of the 4 greatest ladies of all time. So then they're like, well, where does that
So just scaring us.
Yeah, no. But he goes, so when they look at those traditions, they say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in his justice, either he punishes you to remove the sins, balances it out, or he wants to elevate you in rank. And that can go with anything in this world before the Sakarat al-Maut, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that you are sinful, you may have a sickness, you may go through a trauma, you may go through difficult times, and that's a filtration process to remove sins from your book, let's say. But in saying that, you may be sinless, and Allah wants to test you in order for him to increase you in rank for the hereafter. So when we feel pain, at the time you're like, this is too much, but when it comes to the hereafter, you're like, yo, I'll do that again.
But to be honest, if we're thinking about trying to be good human beings, be good mu'mineen, then the idea is that inshallah, I don't want to say death is something we look forward to, because I don't know if there is anyone who does, but the meeting of Allah, liqa Allah, in itself is something we, in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, we say, as-sabiqun, as-sabiqun, ulaika al-muqarrabun fi jannati na'im. And that yearning to reach the eternal paradise should be something that we work for. But I don't know, but I feel like, growing up, we used to have a scholar who used to come to our center. He was known as Sheikh Barzakh. He was literally Malik al-Maut. He'd remind us about death, and it was...
that's me today.
That's me today.
I like those lectures.
Because it puts you in place, right?
I don't know
from a young age.
I don't. Even from a young age. I don't think it puts me in place. Inshallah, it does. But I think it reminds me of reality.
Yeah.
Like, we are actually going to die, as much as we, can get, lost in our own world. Not remembering that there is death that's going to come chase us one day. So it's a nice reminder.
Yeah, it is a nice reminder. But at the same time, there's like, we hear a lot about the punishment. And a lot of that stuff, and of course there's obviously the stations of barzakh, which if you can, inshallah, explain, Sayyid. But from what I understand, when you're asked the questions,
yes,
and we are, we're quizzed on our belief and our iman, then inshallah, from what I've read, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make the grave large for us. And Hadith Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, the same size as if one had traveled in those days for 1 month. Imagine, that could be thousands of miles. And it goes to show that maybe Allah wants it to be easy for us, and not, guns and fire and blazing everything.
Whips made of
whips. Do you know what I mean? Maybe not guns, but
no, that's a very good point, because the way that we do get people to, kind of stay within the parameters of religion is one of the ways in which either you show them the reward, or you show them the punishment that's there to instill fear, which is not the correct way to preach religion. I mean, it might work for some people, but I think the best way is to see what the religion offers, the beauty within religion. Imam Ali, as he states, I do not worship Allah. Yeah, I don't worship Allah in greed of his heaven or in fear of his hellfire, but I found him worthy. So in that particular perspective, we have to kind of see that, yes, Allah is just, and yes, he is also merciful. But you need to worship for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what you're saying is, Allah in his justice, he did promise everyone, if you're good, then you'll have a good barzakh. If you're bad, you're going to be punished for it. And like you stated, yes, the transition from this world, when the soul is being taken from our human dense body and is transitioned into the barzakh body, which is identical to our human body. When you're in that transition, you're being questioned. But the questioning in the grave is what either opens and expands your grave, or tightens it upon you. Many of us tell ourselves that, it's just the questions we need to learn them. Who's your Lord, who's your Prophet, who's your Imam, your book.
They call this talqeen.
Yeah, and that's why that's.
I've been to a few funerals.
I mean, and if you recall the tradition of Rasulullah with the mother of Imam Ali, one of the first people, what happened? He stood at the grave after he buried the mother of Imam Ali with his own hands, and he put his shirt as a kafan for her, as a shroud, and he stood at the grave and he said a word, and obviously we understand what he's saying when he tells her not Aqil and not Ja'far.
Nice.
See,
I like it.
Do you see? So when he says that and you read between the lines, you're like, that she's been questioned at that very moment. Now,
he's telling her there. So her soul is listening to Rasulullah.
Exactly. So, but the scholars, they're like, she could have replied because she knew
that's the mother of Amir al-Mu'mineen.
And that in itself should tell us that we need to prepare. But most of us just learn it, like I learned that God is this, or I learned that this is the Prophet, this is the Imam. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with his wisdom, you can't just learn and go into the grave. You need to apply it.
Yeah.
Because Allah will remove it from you if you didn't apply it to your life.
It's difficult. They say for you to even, although you know it and you want to say it, but your tongue refuses to speak
because you did not apply it.
We're speaking, and our soul will be speaking. Not our memory and not what we've been trained, methodically to do as well. It's instinct. Yeah.
So in that sense, once you've reached that stage, you either answer correctly, opens and expands, and if you don't answer correctly, obviously, closes upon you. Now, that transition itself, the questioning period, and that's why they say munkar and nakir.
Yes.
They don't care if you got 6 figures in your bank account, what rank you have amongst your people, how high you are in your job position, how much money. None of that. They don't care. You answer, you answer. You don't answer, you don't answer. And I've some traditions, you know, you read things like they don't have ears, they don't have eyes. They're just there to, you know, like
do their job.
I'm just like, you know what I mean? Like to what they're trying to say is like they have no sense of remorse for what they're about to do in that sense, you know? And so this Munkar and Nakir, there's other traditions that say if you're a believer, it's not Munkar and Nakir. They're actually angels, but they're given the titles Munkar and Nakir is because of how much you don't want to be around them. If you're a believer, they say that their names are known to the believers are Mubashir and Bashir because they give you glad tidings of what lies ahead.
Yeah.
So in that situation, your soul, after it's allocated, goes either towards the garden of heaven or the pits of hell. Now they say that the souls, doesn't matter where you're buried. Doesn't matter where you're buried.
I've heard this, yeah.
If your righteous soul goes towards the Jiwar of Amir al-Mu'mineen, known as Wadi Salam. And if you have a soul, which is ultimate abode will be hellfire, you go towards a place in Yemen by the name of Wadi Barahut.
Oh my God.
And that's where...
God forbid.
Yeah. So those are the two transitions. Now, when we take that into perspective, then you ask yourself then, what's the purpose of going to the graves if the souls are in Wadi Salam or in Wadi Barahut? So what's the purpose? And interestingly enough, there's so many traditions, and this is not mentioned much. And they say that for the soul, it has 3 periods. Like if you go to, for example, Surah Ghafir, because they ask the question, like, are the souls, you know, in the heavens? Is that where Wadi Salam is? Is it underneath the earth? Because, you know, when you're buried, we're buried underground. So they say that it might be a different... And what it seems is when you go to Surah Ghafir, it speaks about the punishment that the people of Fir'aun are getting. But the way that it showcases a punishment alludes to the fact of where they are. It says in the Quran, it says that they are being, the wording, in close proximity to the punishment or the fiery punishment, both in the day and the evening. Meaning what? There's a sun there.
Yeah.
If there wasn't a sun, there wouldn't be a
Day and night. Yeah.
day and night. So that alludes to the fact, and then it says after it goes, and then when the hour comes, which is Judgment Day, then they will be punished a severe punishment. So in that level, you understand that, okay, so the people of Fir'aun, in a period between when they died to the hereafter, there's a period where they're in a
geographical location,
Exactly. So, and they say that that whole concept of barzakh, and when we spoke about earlier, is, you know, in Surah Al-Rahman, Maraj al-Bahraini yaltaqiyan, that the two seas meet, but they do not mix. Why? Because there's a barzakh between them. And that's why we say that on this earth, there is the human body and the barzakh bodies. This world and the barzakh world, but between them is a veil. That they do not see each other, but there is still access between them.
Yeah.
And that's a whole different notion in itself.
So you know the world of barzakh.
Yes.
And so it's a similar thing but different world. I'm just trying to remember something I've heard before. Alam and Dar, that's the one.
Oh, okay,
So
going that way. Okay.
The world of atoms. I think that's
yeah.
the right translation to it. So we were atoms once.
That's right.
So
That's right.
very similar how we were atoms and now we came to this world.
That's right.
Pretty much that's very similar to what barzakh is, if I'm not mistaken. So why can't we remember the world of atoms? Is there like any...
Say, you
No,
guys are getting heavy
because
for me.
I want to get into a bit of, you know, sometimes we say deja vu or
Take
something.
my
Yes.
notebook out.
Yes.
I've heard
I'll green you out if I start this one.
one person has told me
Go.
if you felt like you've seen something or felt something before, that's actually from the world of atoms. I don't know if there's like...
one world of Alam Arwah.
Oh, so there's...
So Imam Ali has a statement. He says, because like you said, sometimes you see someone and you think to yourself,
But that happens a lot, huh?
yeah, you're like, I don't know them, and it's not the sense of something like, oh, I'm attracted to that person. No, it's not an attraction.
Familiar.
Yeah, a familiar. Yeah, exactly. So there is an aspect of I find that person familiar and I'm at ease with them. And there's others that you've never met in your life, and you're like, I don't feel comfortable with that person.
Vibes, yeah.
You know, Imam Ali, when he's asked what he says, Al-arwah junudun mujannada man ta'arafa minha i'talaf wa man tanakara ikhtalaf, which means sometimes there's souls that it's been imprinted who your friends were. When we say deja vu, it's imprinted who you were close to. Man ta'arafa minha i'talaf, mean whoever recognizes each other, the souls we're talking about, the souls that recognize each other, ائتلف means they're in harmony. ومن تناكر, munkar comes from the wording of in the Holy Quran is that you do not know. That's why we have ma'ruf, because as we go to alim al-dhar, something that we were taught.
Okay.
Because it's known. Ma'ruf comes from the word known, because you're known in your fitrah that this is good and this is bad. Munkar comes from not knowing. That's why in Surah Yusuf it says very clearly that Yusuf arafahum, that he recognized them, وَهُمْ لَهُ مُنْكِرِينَ.
Okay.
That they did not know that.
Okay.
So in that aspect, so فَمَنْ تَنَاكَرَ مِنْهَا اخْتَلَفَ means the souls that do not recognize each other give their separate ways. So it goes down to that particular point, but then we go back to alim al-dhar where we say that why is the Quran called remembrance? Had we been taught before? And that's why when Allah brought it down, it's called the remembrance, to remind you that which you were first taught once upon. Anyway, that's a
very
we'll keep that for the
like all proper next level stuff.
Yeah,
It's a 10-part series.
honestly it does it. That when
Different dimensions, said Abdullah.
but like if you ask yourself, what, we're going very off topic, I'm so sorry, but just a question. What sequence of events led this chair, this wood in the chair, to be used for a person sitting on it to speak about Ahlul Bayt, and the wood in a stage in a concert?
It's true.
Wow.
What happened previously in that sequence of events? Because we know every single thing on this world, وَمَا مِن شَيْءٍ لَا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ. Every single atom on this world does tasbih. You don't understand the tasbih. So every single atom was somewhere before, and the sequence of events led it to. Anyways, but going back to this is your fault. It's not mine.
Blessed atoms and blessed chairs as well.
That's what I'm saying.
True,
you know, but the thing is, why did Imam Sajjad in Karbala? So we go on a couple of weeks back. When he goes on the pulpit of Yazid, what did he ask from him? He said, I didn't say I want to go on the pulpit. He says, allow me to stand on these pieces of wood so I may give a speech. It was a pulpit. But Imam Sajjad was it's pieces of wood because it's not used for anything else other than, which is not religious. Whereas if he goes towards that same wood of Rasulullah, pulpit.
Yes.
SubhanAllah.
There's a different element there.
SubhanAllah.
So that in itself should tell us that yes, anything that's happened from the previous world, and that goes on. Like whatever happens in this world, obviously affects barzakh. What happens in barzakh affects the hereafter, and that's just the transition of things. So
I wanna, if you don't mind,
Bismillah.
So we just to go back to the kind of the chronology. So obviously we're in the grave, the sakrat al-maut, the taking of the soul, and then we enter the grave, we ask the questions, and then from there, if you're one of the mu'mineen, you go to head to Wadi Salam. From what I understand, when the souls enter Wadi Salam, there's a hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam where he said that this is where the believers will meet, and they'll mingle, and they'll ask, what happened when you died, what's going on in the world, and they'll mingle and ask each other questions. Even Amir al-Mu'mineen, there were times where he would return from battle, and on his way back, his companions, would ask him, why are you stopping and looking around? And he'd say, because I can see what you cannot see. I can see the meeting of the believers. And I've also heard as well that it's here in Wadi Salam where the Mu'mineen can meet the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam and even share food from their plate. And in that interaction is something which is obviously you yearn for that, you look forward to it. When you imagine that we can meet other believers on this earth, perhaps even the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, we're honored with that. And then this is all prior to even Jannah. That in itself is just mind-boggling.
That in itself is Jannah.
Allah gives you sustenance. Allah gives you, the companion Abu Basir, if I'm not mistaken, Imam Sadiq's companion?
I'm not sure.
I think there's a companion, Abu Basir, that apparently, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the story goes he had a dream of his father who was in barzakh. And in the dream, his father's telling him, I'm here, this, that. And he's like, Dad, what's going on? How's life there? Tell me the gossip. And his dad says to him, Wallah, it's good. I'm enjoying it. I enjoy most of the day, except for 1 hour in the day, a scorpion comes and stings me. He goes, it nearly ruins my day every day. And then I wake up next day and my day starts again. It's generally okay. He goes, why does the scorpion sting you? He says, because when I was on the earth, I used to speak I used to speak poison to your mother. And because of that, I'm still being punished. And it just goes to show that, we will still be held accountable. And like you said, Said, we are being cleansed and prepared, inshallah, for entrance into paradise.
Inshallah.
Because how can we be amongst the pure if we're not pure ourselves? And something that always hits me, and slightly off topic, but every time I try and imagine Jannah, okay, I always tell myself that for a true believer, Jannah could be like an open, empty space. But if you have the chance to pray and be amongst Ahlul Bayt and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in peace and privacy, that should satisfy you. It should be enough for you. Do you know what I mean? But am I at that stage? I don't know.
But going off your point,
Yeah.
if someone was to come and they would come and tell you, you can enter the highest ranks of Jannah, but you don't see Amir al-Mu'mineen.
Oh. Yeah.
Isn't that a question?
Yeah.
If someone comes in and says, okay,
Yeah.
you're allowed to enter heaven, but you'll never be able to see Amir al-Mu'mineen. Is that Jannah?
No.
I'll be upset.
Yeah, I mean, that puts a spanner in the works, doesn't it?
I'm happy I'm in Jannah, inshallah.
No, because we look forward to meeting the Ahlul Bayt.
But that's the thing. But that just shows us that the Jannah for us, like, a few weeks back when we were talking about Muharram, for us, in the agony of the tragedy, there is a underlying sense of completion,
Yeah.
being there, a fulfillment,
Yeah.
being there. And that fulfillment, when you get in the hereafter, only by seeing the Ahlul Bayt or being around them, or maybe seeing their light, the light that they say that the nur of Imam Hussein would distract everyone from even looking at Hur al-Ain.
Wow.
That's the nur from just the face of Imam Hussein. So going back to the point of ruh, the question is now that transitioned, yeah? Is there a way that I can have access to them?
To who? Sorry.
To the people in barzakh.
So we in this world.
We're in this world.
I was going to lead to this question.
You're asking us, Said? Oh my days.
But that's the thing, like,
Yeah.
because most people think a person is deceased, has returned back towards Allah, has gone to the next realm. Is it cut off, or is there something still that is accessibility? Now, for us to access them, they say that you can, but it's not up to you. It's whenever Allah wants. It's when He shows you them in Alam al-Ru'ya. The dreams,
Yeah.
the interesting thing is, the reason why you see them, how they lived in this world, is because they have the exact image in a barzakh body. And that's what you see is the barzakh body. But sometimes dreams can be correct, and sometimes dream can be misleading. But if you see, for example, Ahlul Bayt in a dream, shaitan.
Is there a difference between a dream and a ru'ya? How can we tell the difference?
Ru'ya is the one that we want.
Yeah.
Ru'ya is the
how do we
correct
know,
one.
like-
God given.
We don't know, okay.
Isn't there a hadith from, if I'm not mistaken, Amir al-Mu'mineen, where he says the three types, like you said, either it's from shaitan, or it's guidance from Allah, or I think he says, and the third type is like it's trivial. Yeah, it's something,
Trivial,
like
something you thought about before you fell
like
asleep.
accent,
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's one. But often these things, sometimes you have these dreams, sometimes the person's trying to tell you something.
Yeah.
Like in the case that you just mentioned, we can take the scorpion as being something that maybe he wants his son to go and
resolve.
allow his mum to, sometimes
Yes,
it's...
yeah.
To forgive him.
Yeah,
Possibly.
Yeah, but there is stories like that,
Yeah,
I have something owing, can you please, because I'm being punished. And so they have that contact. Sometimes it's just to give you an ease.
But Said,
mind.
even the fact that Allah would grant us that chance to right our wrongs, even after, we talk about in Surah Al-Mu'minun, chapter 100, I think, where we say, where we ask Allah the opportunity to return to the world. Yeah, and so I may go do good in what I left behind. And we sort of talk about doing amal, basically coming back to the earth.
Mu'minun verse 100.
Correct.
Yeah.
And in that stage, Allah says, no,
It says, this is a word that I have said.
yes.
That's it. And then there's a barzakh after them.
But the fact that even we can interact via dreams and have the opportunity to right wrongs,
Is something massive.
yeah,
It's
and
mercy in
sadaqah
itself.
jariyah, and there's so many opportunities to continue benefiting after your death as
You know
well.
what this is reminding me of? I remember, I think I was in Hussein Rasul Azam. I think it was Sayed Ali Radhawi giving a lecture. Speaking of death, mashallah.
He loves
he's
it.
known,
He loves it.
He's known for these lectures. And he gave a very nice story where he said there was a man who used to see his father in the dream. So he would always see like his father, you know, he'll have a sufra, like a, you know, like a food table, but with no food on it, for example. Or he'll see a man, you know, his dad is not feeling happy. He's a bit in a little agony, he's a little something. But the son doesn't know because his dad is unable to communicate why he feels this way.
Okay.
So he went to a scholar, and the scholar sort of interpreted this ru'ya for him. And then he was telling, the scholar told the son, what your father is trying to say to you is do amal khair for me, so I don't suffer. So that day, that same day,
Give me some sustenance.
yeah. So that same day, he goes, you know what? I had like water that I spilt. That night he went to sleep. He hasn't done nothing good in his father's name. He went to sleep. He saw his father in a dream. His father came happy. And he was, you know, he had food on the table and he was thanking his son. And his son goes, I haven't done nothing. I've just found out like what you want from me, but I've done nothing. He goes, no. When you threw that water on the floor, there was the ants that came to drink from it. And she said, Rahmallah wadi. And that Rahmah reached me. So
Wow.
yeah, that
Wow.
and things like that, you know, I've lost a father.
Sayyid Hadi.
Yeah.
Cracker ones. Those
Really,
ones.
yeah.
Yeah.
So when I heard that, I'm like,
You're gonna be
got
spilling
me
water
thinking.
everywhere.
No water.
Just-
But you know, amal salih.
Throwing
And we
everywhere.
wish for, you know, the Riyah Salih.
That's right.
This helps us in the
That's right.
afterlife.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Amongst three things. Yeah.
So at what stage does Raj'a come in? I know this is slightly off topic. I know it's your favorite topic, Said, but like, you know, in this Wadi Salam period,
Yes.
and there's a point where Allah will give us, inshallah, the opportunity, if we're not on this earth, to return back for the Raj'a. Or how does it work? Because
Very. This one's
Very
I thought you were
summary-based.
going to go into the depth of it, but this was
No,
an easy
no.
one. So they say, obviously, that we have that one tradition from Du'a al-Ahad, where we come to a stage where we recite, if we want to be of the companions,
Yes.
on 40 days in a row. فإن حال بيني وبينه الموت الذي جعلت على عبادك حتما مقضيا فأخرجني من قبري مؤتزرا كفني شاهرا سبي. You know, if between me and you death is the thing that puts us apart, then resurrect me from my grave, holding everything, prepared for being by your side. That's one, God resurrects you. Then there is an aspect of the believer that has had all the necessary characteristics and actions to be possibly returned back towards Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman's reign. They would come, the angels, and tell him, by the way, the Imam's there. You have an option. Would you like to stay in that heaven that you're in? Or would you like to come and be prepared to be alongside the Imam of your time? And they have that option. And this tradition is very clear. It's like, yes, some of them, and some of them like, I'm happy where I am. So that in itself is striking, that you have that access even after barzakh. So there's heaven upon heaven.
there is a sense of free will and decision making, and
Even in that level.
Yeah.
After, you know, like after you've returned back towards Allah, and
consciousness it still exists. Like, you're not a soul. Just the way I've always thought of it is, you're traveling and your hands are tied.
you're on a train and you're going to get there.
You're either getting poked with spears by an angel, or you're being brought fruits, and you just have to deal with it. If you're lucky, you're
like,
great.
here we
If not-
go again.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you can continue to gain knowledge. You can continue to interact with others,
that's
other
right.
souls, and even living souls on the earth. And like you said, even have the choice to join Imam Zaman. Very interesting.
So we did mention, I think we just
skipped something.
Yeah, when we said, what does the grave have to do with anything for visiting the grave?
Yes.
Yeah, so we went on the
Full on.
we went all the way back
Atoms.
towards the world of the
think I
atoms.
took his
Oh my
atoms.
God. Yeah.
We've done a science
So
class.
but it was a good point.
I
enjoyed it.
But in saying that, when we go towards the grave, you know, someone asked then, if you're saying that the souls go to Wadi Salam or Wadi Barahut, why am I going towards the grave? Now, amongst the traditions, I've come across one that says, you know how there is obviously night and day, and there's a whole routine of the souls. The tradition, it says that in the evening is the time that the souls go towards Wadi Barahut or Wadi Salam during the evening. And that's why the scholars come and say that's why he noises sometimes at night, sometimes the veils are rifted so you can hear some particular noises. People, that's why they go past Wadi Barahut, that when they would rush at nighttime because they would hear sounds of pains and people screaming and in agony when they go past Wadi Barahut. And they say when Fajr is about to happen, they return back towards their grave. And when the sun is up, that they're in their grave again. And the grave in itself, what did we say? That for the disbeliever, it's a pit of hell. Yeah. So it can be, really squeezing.
Well, it's like a door as well.
You enter. Yeah. That was the first, when you first question, you open the door, you're in.
Yeah.
You're not. Maybe it could be. We don't have access to everything within barzakh, but we have glimpses of what it can be. But it does say that it returns. So during the daytime, the body is connected. But like you said, it's not like that small hole that it's either expanded, kind of like Hermione's bag in the Deathly Hallows. With the
Prisoner of Azkaban as well. Deathly Hallows. You're so baffled.
Harry Potter.
We were talking about Harry Potter before the podcast. Okay. MashaAllah, Said Abdullah's got a world of knowledge on Hogwarts.
It's the expandable charm that they had. Is that bad?
Have you ever met a scholar, MashaAllah, who can tell you about Hogwarts and the Deathly Hallows?
No. This is the first historical moment.
This is what they call relatable.
So if I start saying the spell that it was necessary to make that, then it becomes problematic. So you imagine it, because we can fathom it. The fact that there's a bag there, and you open all the tents that they had for the Quidditch match, the Quidditch World Cup, and the tent is tiny, and you enter it, it's like a 3-story house inside. We can imagine these things, that hole for us is that, but it expands. And that's why there's traditions that say that the barzakh realm, in comparison to this realm, is the comparison of the previous realm to this realm, which is what? The realm of the womb.
Wow.
So
the womb to this universe.
It's a realm.
Wow.
Alam al-arham.
Okay.
It's a whole realm where you grow and you go from one form exactly to another, and you transition and you grow during that period of time, and every single thing that happens affects you. What your mother drinks, for example, what she eats, what she's around.
So that really does affect.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
Okay.
That's why the Hafiz of the Quran, for example, they often ask the mother, did you recite Quran? Were you around Quran? And they're like, this guy's learning Quran when he's 3-4 years old. The Hafiz is like, yeah, of course. Allama Ansari, the great Sheikh Al-Ansari, when he became a marja, they came to his mother. They like to her, are you proud that your son now is an Ayatollah, is a marja for the Shia? And she says, I didn't expect anything less. He's like, why? Because I never breastfed him except that I was in a state of wudu.
MashaAllah.
Never. She said, I expected this from him. Why? Because it all goes into how you're transitioning them, what you're teaching them, what you're, empowering them with. And so you have that notion that whatever happened there transitions into this world and affects this world. And that's why when we say that tradition, that the example given is that how big the world is alam al-arham to this alam al-dunya. How
so the womb to the universe.
Womb to the universe, So imagine barzakh to this world. If we take that tradition. And try to understand it. So that
this is going to be a very silly question, by the way. But I was just thinking of this while we're having this conversation. Apart from us humans, okay, alhamdulillah, we have souls and everything. But there's birds, there's dolphins, they're all creatures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do they have souls?
I was hoping he doesn't say jinn.
Oh my God.
That's inshallah, I'll come back in a few months, we'll do jinn as well. Don't worry.
No, I'm not doing that. This is enough for me already.
You've already had
we did jinns, but that was just 2 of us.
I know.
So we're okay.
So now there was a third, we don't know.
Maybe there was.
Maybe more.
My God.
Was there noises and stuff?
I'm getting shivers already.
I got a few stories for you, inshallah, after the podcast.
Australian jinns.
Interesting question. I think we should delve into that when we discuss souls in a few months.
Inshallah. I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Because I've also heard every creature also does tasbih to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I think,
like you said, everything has a purpose and a place. Whether it's atoms or items of around us, or even like other living creatures. We all serve a purpose towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
One time before we had this conversation, Sayyid,
Bismillah.
me and Ahmed wanted to talk about death, but I think we wanted the theme to be like Destination Jannah. I don't know if you remember. Yeah. That just came to my head right now.
Where did this destination go?
Inshallah, we'll
Sayyid Ali had this desire to call this podcast Destination Jannah. Destination Jannah. If I search on my WhatsApp, Destination Jannah, say Mushtaba, how many times?
Yeah.
Like
I didn't really talk about
Did he
paradise.
just put signs everywhere?
Yeah.
just little pamphlets and.
I was
Because
not having it.
I generally feel,
Yeah.
sorry to stop you, interject that. I generally feel like we're like hardly told about the beauty of
true.
Jannah. We're always
Yeah.
told about the
Sahih.
pits of hell. That's never what to expect in Jannah. The only thing I've heard is like there's rivers of honey and wine and milk. Nothing else. So I don't know what else. Hur al-Ain, like all these nobilized things that people tell us about. But nothing more. Hell, we know, mashallah, everything.
We do. We know all the stages, the stations, everything.
As in we don't know.
Yeah.
The layman, let's say.
That's maybe something we can delve into and look into.
Yeah.
Different levels.
There's a
in
lot.
there.
There's a lot to talk about in this. I mean, there's
Inshallah, we see each other.
any
How
resources.
to go up levels.
Yeah. Is there any resources you could recommend to anyone at home who
For this particular topic
for
tonight?
afterlife in general?
Yes.
Yeah.
So obviously there's textbooks about that, but if you're just wanting to read, I think we stated it earlier, we have the book of Mi'ad for Sayyid Dastaghaib al-Shirazi. Very nice. Not too thick, not too small. And it goes through the stages. And Sheikh Abbas al-Qummi has one called Manazil al-Akhirah, the stages of the hereafter. So those ones are nice. You can access them. You can order them online. Pretty sure they have that on Amazon. I should get it from my local Shia bookstore. But they're beautiful books.
Yeah.
They're eye-opening. And they answer a lot of questions, ones that we didn't delve into in the podcast.
They're translated in English.
This is English. This is English. Yeah, this is English.
And it just goes to show as well that these day-to-day things we do, day-to-day actions, they will all play a part at some point.
They should.
Whether we know it or not.
They would, yeah.
What you mentioned, Said, about wudu before breastfeeding, just all the young mothers out there, even the fathers, encourage your families and your spouses to take care of these things, because they will play a role at some point in the lives of your children when they grow up, in our akhirah as well, inshallah. But there's a lot of responsibility on us to use our time wisely, because we will be held accountable for everything we did. So
We will, and I think time is running out. That's inshallah.
we can talk for so much longer about this.
Yeah, honestly.
Inshallah.
Yeah, it needs a thorough discussion, inshallah, at some point. But thank you,
And
Said.
we'll call that Destination Jannah.
Inshallah. Said Abdullah, thank you as always.
Habibi, honor.
We love having
Honor
you
and
on,
pleasure.
and we're very honoured. Hopefully we'll come to you next, inshallah.
Habibi,
Have us in Australia, we'll be there.
Ya Allah. Ya Allah.
you just make the niyyah. We'll
Inshallah.
access everything else,
Inshallah,
don't you worry.
inshallah, if Allah wills.
Inshallah.
We'll sight see
After
some
Maghrib.
We'll let you ride the kangaroos down
Kangaroos,
there.
yes.
Yeah, and all the
Down under.
rest of the
I didn't
stuff.
know they had pockets. Anyway, that's a different conversation. I found out the other day.
Did you know? No, I think you saw that video of the guy wearing the clothes and he had a
Yeah.
pocket and there was a joey there. And then he opened the pocket and then the joey just came into the guy wearing
So
the
Joey,
uniform.
a baby kangaroo.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
So
I don't know these things.
I should have clarified that.
Steve Owen.
I'm thinking of a human.
Crikey.
Joey.
Oh my God, down under.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much as always tuning in.
Thank
Hit
you
that
for the
subscribe
follow.
button, and of course, I'm sure you would agree as much as we would that Sayyid Abdullah always brings knowledge to us and of course to you guys. So thank you, Sayyidina,
Habibi.
for joining us.
Pleasure.
And
Pleasure. Thank you for
inshallah,
having
we will
me.
have you again, not at all. And yeah, if you've not already hit that subscribe button, that like button, we are alhamdulillah growing and growing online with your support. But as always, we need your suggestions, your feedback as to where we can improve, what you'd like to hear being discussed, and inshallah, any other suggestions that you have will ears, inshallah. So we will see you next week. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Salam alaikum.